So this is the first time that we have seen each other in three-ish weeks or something like that. 2.5, maybe three weeks.
It's been too long since my inner experience has been interrogated. I was missing it.
Well, good. We'll try to scratch that itch here this morning and this afternoon. Anything we should be talking
Since we
about?
left, I just want to mention one thing that's been kind of crazy for some reason, and I don't know why, but our podcast together, Russ, has completely exploded in the last 3 weeks. It is now by far the most watched podcast on my channel. And I would have to do the maths, but it might have more views than all of my other podcasts combined. Our episode is on 130,000 and still going up, which is far and away higher than my second most, which is at 10,000. So I don't know what caused this, but the demand for inner experience is there, and it's been great to see. The comments are amazing and very entertaining, and lots of people confident about their inner experience when they shouldn't be. But it's been a wild ride the last few weeks, seeing it going up. So I thought I'd mention that before we dive into the beeps.
Well, I had meant to mention to you as well that I have been now receiving an email a day, maybe, from people who are telling me about their inner experience and that they've seen a podcast, which I presume is your podcast. Sometimes
Right.
some
Cool.
people say it is. So there's a lot of people who are writing to me directly, more than I can respond to or whatever, and saying, "Well, you don't understand my inner experience, or I've got inner experience that's different from anything you've ever seen," or something like that.
Interesting.
And it's sort of hard for me to know what to what to do with that, but I do think there is a growing interest in inner experience. And where that comes from, I don't know. I suspect it's a swinging of the pendulum from the sort of the denial of inner experience that's rampant in the world, but it's hard to know.
Maybe people are finally getting over this everyone thinks like me bias, and finally we're coming to the conclusion that everyone's minds are very different, and there's evidence of that now. There's a lot more people coming out with ADHD, autism, all these different forms of neurodivergences, and people are starting to kind of accept the idea that somehow our 86 billion neuron brains are actually quite different from each other, which has kind of seemed startlingly obvious to me, but maybe not for others.
Well, that would be the optimistic way of looking at it, and and it might actually even be true. So it's. I think that the kind of effort that the three of us and the others folks are involved with is sort of the opposite of the main thrust of AI in the AI direction, which I think the AI direction is just a symptom of the whole deal, where you don't really need to care about anything. You just put in a bunch of numbers and out comes an answer, and that answer can be convincing and interesting and useful and whatever. I'm not criticizing AI, but it is an entirely impersonal I'll leave it at that. It is entirely impersonal.
Right.
And DES is the absolute diametric opposite of that.
Right. It's probably a conversation for another day, but I'd love to get your thoughts on an AI model that was trained on inner experience. Had this billions and trillions of data points on inner experience and what that AI might look like. Definitely a conversation for another day, but something that I've been interested in and thinking about a lot.
I've got a team working on that. And when I have something to say,
that's very interesting.
I will say it. Right now, I don't have anything to say about it except that I've got a team working on it. And I shouldn't say I've got a team working on it. I should say there is a team working on it that's trying to take my stuff, and I'm involved with it. But it's not like I recruited these people and whatever.
Interesting. Cool. Excited to hear more.
I'm participating in it, for good or for ill. I don't know. We'll see about that. So shall we dive into Evan's, is this going to be day 5? Is that, I've sort of lost track, but something like that.
Yeah, I have as well. I'm not sure. This is 5 sounds about right.
Let's presume
Yeah.
for the moment that it's day 5, and I'll sort that through before I make the video. But,
Yeah. So beep number 1.
so I'm ready. If Gualtiero's ready.
Right.
Number 5, day 5, number 1.
So I was standing up. Most of my awareness was that my legs were incredibly tired, heavy, and sore. I just completed a inhumane, ridiculous workout. So almost all of my experience in these beeps was leg down or waist down mostly. And then I had some tactile sensation of my hand being on my hip and my fingers pressing on my skin, but probably 80% of the awareness was just tired legs, heavy legs, and sore legs.
And is there basically one sensation of heavy soreness, or is this a multiple, my legs feel heavy and they feel sore and they whatever?
I was thinking about this question because I thought you might ask me, and I don't really know. There seems to be distinct aspects of it, but it is sort of perceived as a whole. Like it's hard to, I would say sore and heavy are probably different in that the soreness is localized specifically to a particular, like my quad is sore, but the heaviness is sort of a bodily sensation of the entire leg and equally spread out over the whole leg. Does that make sense?
Okay. And so does it seem to me that at this moment, well, let me ask a more fundamental question. So first off, is this aspect of your experience entirely sensory? That is, I'm not analyzing where this comes from or what happened to it or whatever, but I'm just feeling
Sensory,
it.
it's perception rather than cognitive awareness. Yeah.
Okay. And then does it seem like I am noticing my legs, or does it seem like I am noticing my legs and I am noticing my quads? Or is that too fine a distinction? Or
Does it feel like I'm noticing my legs and the pain, or just the pain? I think I have some. I don't know. That's it.
Okay. So I don't know is a fair enough answer to that. There doesn't have to be an answer to that question. I'm perfectly capable of asking questions that don't have answers. And so what I'm gathering is that as far as my leg aspects is concerned, I am feeling sensations in my legs. I am feeling what my legs are sending to my brain, I guess. I guess you could say. And there's heaviness and there's soreness. And maybe these are differentiated, and maybe they're not. But I am 80% of my sensorium, consciousness, whatever, is receiving perception sensations about leg pain, soreness.
Yes, I think that's right.
Okay. You got any more questions about that, Gualtiero?
Yeah. If I understood correctly, when you initially described the experience, you used the words tired and sore, and then later you switched to heavy and sore. Is heavy a better descriptor for what you initially called tired? Or are there 3 different things, or what's the best way to describe the relationship between the tiredness and the heaviness sensations?
I think I might have said I have all 3 words written down. So legs, very tired, heavy, and sore. So I might have said all 3. And then the second time, you're right, I leaned on heavy and sore. What's the difference between them? Good question. I can differentiate. I can differentiate soreness for sure. But heaviness and tiredness, like those are both just metaphors, really, right? They're both just words. I don't know if either of them necessarily approximates the experience of the whole leg and what I'm feeling. Is one of them better or the other? I don't know. Maybe heavy. Hard to say.
No, and I didn't mean to suggest that. Um, I was under the misconception that you might have switched from tired to heavy, but
Right.
really there were all three of them. So that's a helpful clarification. Thank you.
Yeah.
Onward, and then there is something about hands on hips, fingers on hips. I don't remember exactly what you said.
Yeah, so I had like my hand like this. So some tactile sensation of my hand near my hip and then fingers pressing on my skin. But I would say maximum 20% of the experience, maybe even just 10. The legs, the interoceptive perception from the legs is really the vast majority of my awareness in that moment.
Okay. And without trying to get too careful about the last 10 or 20%, is this a sensation of an on my hips sensation or on my fingertip sensation? So am I feeling something pressing against my hips, which happens to be my fingertips, or am I feeling my fingertips pressing against something which happens to be my hips? If that distinction makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think when I tend to have one body part touching another, I can feel the sensation on both ends.
Okay, so
Didn't have any cognitive awareness either way. So I wasn't thinking fingers on hips. It was just feeling on fingertips, the skin on the finger of my fingertips and the skin on my hip.
Okay, so let's set aside the I usually do portion of that because that may or may not be true, and I don't want to explore something that we don't have a way of doing it. But so I think it is possible to have my fingers on my hips and feel it in one aspect of my body and not the other. Whether that's true for you, I don't mean to imply that I think it is. I just don't want us to assume that just because my fingers are in contact with my hips, I must be feeling them in both domains.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay. So there's something, and these are fingers on my bare hips. It's not like on my shorts or whatever. So it's, so this is my skin, my hip skin feeling my fingers pushing and my finger skin feeling my hips as best I can tell in the last 10%.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
But entirely, both of these sensations, which first I'm gathering occupy sort of 100% of whatever we want to call this stuff, awareness, consciousness, apprehensions or whatever. It's entirely sensory.
This is where it gets really tricky, right? With awareness and separating awareness with what was in your visual field in that moment. Like, of course, I was looking at something and I know what I was looking at, but in the moment of the beep, I'm really trying to direct my awareness to what was there. And I think it was 100% bodily perception. But that's the really hard part, right? You know, there might be some visual field in there. There might be, I think upstairs it was pretty quiet anyway.
Okay.
There's probably some other stuff going in there, but that's the really hard part to tease through, to really figure it out.
Okay. So what I would say about that is our goal is not perfection. Our goal is as good as we can do. And so I'm happy with beep number 1. Gualtiero, you on to beep number 2. And maybe we should, before we do that, Gualtiero, I can't remember. Have I been the primary interviewer on all of these? And if so, should I continue in that role? Or
yeah, I like the way we're doing it. If I have any more questions, I'll ask.
Okay.
If not, you ask. You're way better at this than I am.
So I'm not sure that I can remember how we're doing it. But so if I'm doing it in a way that offends you in any way, well, let me know and we'll figure it out. So number 2.
And my girlfriend's crawling behind me because she feels like she can't be on camera. You're allowed to just be on camera and get some. She's just crawling behind me. You're allowed to walk.
Hello, girlfriend. We can cut you out of there and.
She was just. No, she has no problem. She just didn't want to disturb, and she thought crawling across the floor was a better way of not disturbing. Anyway.
I think in the scheme of things, we can deal with girlfriends a lot easier than we can deal with a lot of other things. Isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Okay, beep two. So again, a feeling of body tiredness. My right quad felt specifically tight, and this time I was looking at a man on a computer screen, focused on his eyes, and there was some yellow in my perceptual awareness as well.
So I'm not sure that I got the overall gist of that. Are there three aspects here? Quad tight, seeing the eyes of the guy, and something about yellow? Or is that three sort of separate strands?
Yeah, yeah, I would guess so because I was looking at the man on the computer screen, focused on his eyes. There was some awareness of eyes, and then there was some yellow in the awareness as well. So I guess that those are separate because it was a different element to them, the person and the eyes. So it seemed different.
Okay, Walter.
You started with body tiredness. Is that a
Yeah,
fourth thing then? A fourth,
yeah,
a fourth experience?
yeah. I would say so. And all I don't think I found the right word for that, but yeah, it is just a full body heaviness, tiredness. I don't know if those are the exact right words, but it's definitely the most prominent awareness.
So in this beep, unlike the previous beep, there are two separate strands of bodily focus, I guess you might say. So sort of my overall body tiredness and my quad tightness.
Yeah.
Is that your understanding too, Walter? Is that
With the minor qualification that in the first one, there was still some distinction, maybe partial distinction between the tiredness of the whole leg and the heaviness of the legs as a whole versus the more specific soreness of the quads. So even there was a bit of a distinction between these two aspects of the experience of the legs. But maybe it wasn't as distinct as in this one. Is that fair? Or was it a similar distinction between the overall tiredness and the tightness in the right quad? It does.
I think the main. See?
No, anyway, from the way you described it, I would agree that it seems like the experience of the body in the second beep was two more distinct experiences than in the first.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. If that's your question, that's definitely true. Yeah.
so? It seems to me like we're sort of in agreement here that there's more distinction. There's more separateness of two tracks in the second beep than there was in the first beep, which is not to say there was none in the first beep. And what we were said in the first beep was, well, maybe there wasn't, maybe there wasn't. I'm not sure. About the second beep, we're saying, yeah, I'm pretty sure there were two.
Yes.
Everybody agree with that?
Especially because the feeling of tightness in the quad is a different feeling of the tiredness in the body. Whereas before it was kind of the whole legs were tired, heavy, and sore.
Okay. Okay. And then there's the eyes. So I'm seeing the guy on the screen and I'm looking at his eyes. Is that?
Yeah.
And have I?
Well, looking at his face, but I have sort of maybe slightly more awareness of his eyes. So his total face is definitely in the awareness, but his eyes more so.
Okay. And is there anything particular about his eyes, or is it just I can say that I'm
Yeah,
looking...
I think this might be a product of not my experience and more what I'm trying to achieve by making a thumbnail. So like I'm focusing. This is where I'm not sure if this is necessarily an innate element of my experience, or I'm focused on that because eyes are important in thumbnails, and that's something that I'm cognitively aware of, but wasn't aware of in that moment, if that makes sense.
So is that
Or
to
do I
say I have
confuse
a
it?
sort of a sensitivity to the eye display of a thumbnail, and
Yes,
that's probably the background of what's having me focusing mostly on the eye aspect of this face display?
that's my hypothesis, yes.
Okay. So it's not like I'm seeing his eyes because they appear angry to me or because they are blue and I like blue eyes or whatever. That's
Not that I was aware of, anyway.
okay. And then there's yellow,
Yeah,
and so far I haven't understood anything at all about yellow other than there's yellow.
yeah, that's kind of all. Like I didn't take how big the yellow was, how much yellow there was, what the form of the yellow, the shape of the yellow. All I got was yellow.
And is the yellow on the computer screen?
Yeah,
And is it on the guy's face? Is like he's
no.
wearing. So
It's
somewhere
a
in
brush stroke. It's a yellow brush stroke. But again, interestingly, I didn't get anything of brush stroke or size or brush or stroke or anything. It was only the yellow I took from.
so my real eyeballs are aimed at the real screen, and on the real
Yeah,
screen there are two aspects or two things being displayed. One is the guy's face, and the other is a yellow brushstroke. And about the face, I'm interested in the eyes primarily, and for some reason I am seeing the yellowness, but not the brushstrokeness of this other aspect.
yeah, that's
And
correct.
okay, and is that yellowness out there on the screen? I see that I am seeing yellow on the screen as opposed to I am seeing mentally yellow that is probably triggered by the screen, but it's really an inner perception. It's that distinction
I
of I
think the
don't feel like
first
I
one, but I did that distinction has confused me a few times because in my mind all color is mental perception. But the first one, I like the first. There was definitely yellow, as yellow would be displayed on a monitor like this on the screen. It wasn't an artifact or hallucination.
okay. So I have sampled with some people who would say it is as if I have a Gansfeld of yellowness in my imagination, and there's nothing out there that looks like a
Right.
Gansfeld, but it's clearly yellow. And sometimes these people would say it's the same yellow as something that was out there in the environment. But I'm
Okay.
not seeing out
Interesting.
there in the environment. I am seeing a wash of yellow that's clearly an inner seeing rather than an external seeing. I'm
Yeah.
gathering that's not what you're saying. You're
Yeah.
saying I am seeing the yellow that's on the screen, which
Yes.
seems to me like a visual perception of an external thing,
Yeah.
even though I am mentally, no doubt, excuse me, abstracting the yellowness out of the brushstrokeness
Yes.
to be interested in the yellowness and not interested in the brushstrokeness.
Yes. That's true. And that. Thank you for giving that distinction because I was never quite sure the difference. But yeah, I completely understand now.
It is in my work is a very central kind of a thing because people want to know why I call this kind of thing inner experience because Evan is saying, well, I'm seeing the yellow out on the screen. That's not an inner experience. That's an experience of something yellow out on the screen. But the fact of the matter is, experiential fact of the matter is that it's Evan's experience, which he has innerly massaged to be interested in the yellowness and not the brushstrokeness. So
Yeah.
that,
Or the words on the screen because there were words and the brushstroke was over a word, but none of that. I didn't care about any of that for some reason.
right. So what I've got from this is three or maybe four, depending on how we count things, sensory perceptual things, what I call sensory awarenesses. The eyes, the the body tiredness, the quad tightness, the eyes and the yellow are all I'm seeing, feeling some aspect of the inner or external world without
Yeah.
cognizing about it.
As much as I can minimize the cognizing, because there's always going to be a certain amount, I guess.
Right.
But yeah,
Which
I
I
think
think
so.
this is not, I guess, what we might call a propositional. There's no propositional thinking that's in my experience. Does that
Right.
correspond to your definition of propositional thinking? Gualtiero, we've had a conversation about that in different contexts, but these are not propositional experiences. These are sensory aspects mostly.
Yeah.
Can you give a definition of how you're using propositional experience?
My definition, which I think is Gualtiero's definition, but I'm not 100% sure about that, is that propositional thinking has some yes/no answer to it. That I am thinking that there are 3 blocks on my Zoom screen here, and there either are or not about that. So that makes that a propositional thought.
Okay.
Whereas if I'm noticing the green on my Zoom display, there's a thin green outline around me because I'm talking right now, and when Evan's talking, it's around him. The noticing of that greenness would not be propositional.
Right.
I personally am not in favor of that kind of distinction because, well, it's sort of the same thing that we were talking about before. It's everything is, you could say, is propositional, but then nothing is. So.
Makes sense.
So what I really want to do is I want to make sure that Gualtiero understands what we're saying here on Gualtiero's terms. Whether he's got questions that he wants to ask
I
about
could elaborate slightly. What I would say is that for something to be propositional, there has to be an articulation such that something like a predicate may or may not apply to something like a subject. So if the experience is such that there's this kind of articulation, and then therefore there is, as Russ would say, a yes or no answer to the question whether this predicate-like concept applies to the subject-like concept, then that counts as propositional. But if it's just an awareness of a something like a yellowness to somebody's eyes, then that's sensory. But you could add to the experience of the yellowness, the thought there's something yellow there. That would be propositional. If you say, I was thinking that there's something yellow there, then that would be propositional, as opposed to I was just experiencing the yellowness there.
Yeah. I think Russ's definition is easier to understand, but I think I understood the elaboration. I think I got it.
What I think is at the heart of the matter is that the yellowness, as I understand it, and correct me if I got this wrong, is that I'm seeing yellowness as yellowness, and I'm not cognizing about it, not analyzing about it, not propositionalizing about it, whatever. I'm just seeing it.
Sensory yellow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Onward.
So beep 3.
Yep.
I was thinking in my head, so the words weirder or stranger. And I had a visual awareness of the word weirder on the screen in front of me.
And I'm thinking weirder. I didn't quite understand what you meant by I'm thinking weirder or stranger. Does that mean I'm thinking, quote, weirder or stranger, unquote?
Yes. Sorry, I'll add the quote unquote, yes.
Okay.
So thinking in my head, quote, weirder or stranger, unquote.
Okay. And so and is that more or less or equally salient to you than the weirder that you see on the screen?
More. Substantially more, maybe 70-30.
Okay. So let's start there. So these are words, 3 words that are present to you as a phrase, I guess, weirder or stranger, unquote.
Yeah.
And how is that present to you?
So I don't think I see the words. I don't. I don't think I project an image in my head of these words as I said it. But yeah, they were just thoughts, weirder or stranger, but quite emphasized thoughts. Not They were intentional, emphasized thoughts, not quick, not just stream of flow. I'm not sure if that clarifies it.
Well, it's in the direction of. So, is there a voice involved in this? So I'm totally confident that words can be present either voiced or not voiced. And so I'm not trying to suggest one way or the other, but I'm asking, is there a voice involved in this weirder or stranger?
I think so, but I don't. Do you mean do I actually have the auditory experience in my mind as if I was hearing someone in real life, like I'm listening to you? Is it similar to that?
Well, what I'm trying to get us to describe this without my asking any more questions than I have to ask. But that is kind of thing that I'm having. I'm interested in. Are there auditory qualities to this? There don't have to be. So I
No,
think
it doesn't feel like it has an auditory feature.
okay. And how about a motor feature in the sense of I understand myself to be speaking these, even though there's no words coming out of my mouth. I feel these words to be spoken by me, but it's also possible for words to just be there and specific words to be there, weirder or stranger. Those specific words are somehow present, even though I do not speak them innerly or outerly or whatever, and I do not hear them, but they're there nonetheless.
I wish there was a way that I could know exactly what you mean by the words that you say. You know, I wish I knew exactly what you mean by your questions because I feel like it might be elements of both of that. Maybe there is some element of me being there and me being the one to voice it. But it's always like I don't know exactly if I said yes to that, if I'm saying exactly what you're asking. I don't know if there's it feels like a bit, but it's not very prominent.
So when I'm speaking and you're hearing what I'm saying, that's what I would call the straightforwardest definition of hearing. That's when I use the word hearing, that's what I mean. I'm doing something, you're receiving the something, and in the hearing world, you're not creating what it is that you're hearing. You are receiving words that are being created by somebody else. And also in the real hearing world, you can say that there are characteristics of that. This guy has a baritone or bass voice, and he's not speaking with a drawl. And we could describe the characteristics of what is heard. That's what I mean by hearing words. And what I would like to know is whether there is any phenomenon like that.
Okay.
So
I'd say no.
Okay. So I mean by hearing, innerly hearing, as close as I can get to the same thing as outerly hearing. That's what some people would say. For example, I hear Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and I can hear the opening cellos and as if I were there. And there's no question for them. This is an auditory experience. I hear it.
Right.
And some people can say that about a voice too. I have an inner voice. There's somebody saying, and I can tell you what the characteristics of that voice are. And I gather that you're saying that I can't do that.
No, it just feels a part of me. If not, it doesn't. I would say that there's no connection with hearing. I would never have placed any auditory perception or hearing with those thoughts,
Okay.
even though that I'm very confident I can imagine songs and I can think of songs in my head and that they can have an auditory tone. This wasn't it.
Okay. And then about speaking, I would say when you were speaking just a minute ago, that was what I would call external speaking. And I would just call that speaking in general. And whatever that experience is of speaking for you, I am gathering it's different from hearing for you. That you're never confused. Well, am I speaking those words or am I hearing those words? That is not a confusion for you, I'm guessing.
Yes, that's right.
So the question is there any, and I would say that the difference there has something to do with production and conveying what it is that I'm trying to convey and whatever speaking is for you. The question is there any of that present for you in this weirder or stranger set of words?
I would say I'm definitely leaning more towards no than yes.
Okay.
But it could be parts. But I'm definitely more on the no end than the yes. But I wouldn't be shocked if there was bits of the yes, sprinkled in.
Okay. And I would assent to that I don't think it's necessarily crystal clear that there has to be a clear yes and a clear no. I think inner experiences doesn't follow the same rules as external experience. I think there's a pretty clear experience as to whether you're hearing my voice or whether you're speaking your own words. That's pretty, not much confusion about that. But I think in the inner world, I don't think it's necessarily that cut and dried. Gualtier?
Definitely not. Yeah.
I have another related question, or maybe another way to ask the question, because I'm very intrigued by this whole conversation about the thought of weird or stranger. So here's my way of asking: did that involve a temporal flow from weirder to stranger, or were you thinking of all three words at the same time?
Temporal flow. Interesting. What does a temporal flow, what distinction does that draw in your mind in this conversation?
It helps to clarify whether there was something like inner speech, which would take time to go through the different words and maybe the parts of the words, or something like what Russ calls unsymbolized thought, meaning awareness of a full content. In this case, it's not quite a fully propositional content because it's just these three words that you're aware of, but it's a thoughty experience as opposed to a more sensory experience, because it's not something you were sensing from the environment. You were separately visually experiencing the word weirder, but not the or and the stranger. So yeah, I hope that I'm not.
So I agreed with everything you said, and I thought the line of questioning I would have asked that question as, do these words seem to unfold across time? Because I think that's a little more neutral, but I'm totally on board with the spirit of that question. The only thing that I would have objected to is that I don't think it says anything about speech. Gualtier seemed to imply that this if the words unfolded, it makes it sort of closer to inner speech, and I don't think that's true, because it would be just as good for heard words unfold across time as well, and so
Sure, absolutely, yes, yeah. So I was using the word inner speech in a way that encompasses potentially inner hearing as well.
Okay,
but yes. But good to get a question that I can actually answer with some certainty, because there's not many of those that you get in this practice. So it's good to get one where I'm like, yes, I definitely use the first one.
So the words unfold across time, as in weirder is there before stranger, and or
100% that, yes.
Okay, and that, by the way, is is different from words that you see on a page, for example. If you had a headline, weirder or stranger, you could say, I see both of those or all three of those at the same time.
Right. It might be useful or not useful to say that only the word weirder was on the screen. So I had visual awareness of the word weirder. It was weirder or stranger was in my head. So that's maybe that's why there was also a temporal sequence. I wasn't reading it off the screen. Those words weren't on the screen.
Yeah. And is there a semantic significance of this? Is it just weirder or stranger?
So I was actually going to say maybe another element to this that I was experiencing was that that's a judgment I'm making in my head. What I'm thinking is which is better, using the word weirder or using the word stranger. Okay. So there is again sort of a judgmental layer to it that I'm ultimately thinking about. What I was mostly aware of were those actual words, but there's a tone of judgment where I'm trying to think which word is better. Is it stranger or weirder? I didn't write that down, but there's definitely a layer of that.
So I am engaged in the task of deciding whether I prefer the word weirder or stranger in this context.
Yes.
But
I don't know if that's separate to what I said first. Okay.
But that train of thought is not directly present to me at this particular moment. It's no doubt something that I'm engaged in.
Yes.
What's present is the worded display, weirder or stranger.
Yeah. There's almost certainly a tone of it, though, if that makes sense. Some tone or resemblance of a critical lens or a judgment.
Credulousness about it or whatever. Okay.
Whatever word you want to use, yeah.
Okay. Then I think I'm good about that aspect. Walter, are you happy with that?
Yes.
And what I would say about that is that it seems 100% clear that these are exactly the words that are present, weirder or stranger. How those words are present is not so clear. Maybe there's an element of speaking, but if it is, it's very slight. Doesn't seem like there's an element of hearing. But if there is, it's even slighter. Will that seem right?
Yeah. It's not completely clear to me right now the difference between thinking words and it be speech or not speech. Like what is what's thought and what's inner speech, which weirdly enough is one of the hot debates in the comment section of our video as well. People not really being able to parse those apart. And I'm not 100% clear right now what would be inner speech and what would be just thinking the words. Definitely elements of both, but hard to really know.
Well, I think there's no general way to answer that question. I think if we get subsequent samples today or down the road in which you are engaged in what is clearly inner speaking, then you will know what the difference between inner speaking and somehow producing. We can say I'm innerly producing words. These words unfold over time. It isn't obvious to me that I am speaking them, but maybe I am, maybe I'm not. That's how far we've gotten. And I don't think it's worthwhile to try to get farther than that.
Okay.
What I would say is that for some people, the difficulty that you're having does not exist. They would say, I'm totally speaking those words. It's in my own voice. I speak with the same lilt as I do in my outer voice. It's got my same Irish accent and whatever. And I'm halting in the same way that I would sort of search for words or whatever, it feels like I'm doing the same kinds of things that I do when I'm speaking aloud, then there's no question that that's inner speaking. But I haven't heard much of that or any of that about this description.
No, and that's also useful. I don't think there's definitely not an accent. There's a sense that it's from me, that it's being driven by me, but it's not. It's not. There isn't a tone. There isn't an accent. There isn't a real voice. Either I'm producing it or hearing it. So that maybe that leans it more towards just thinking.
Right. So the distinction that I would make, Gualtier made it between inner speech and unsymbolized thinking. I'm happy not to call this unsymbolized thinking. For me, the distinction would be between inner speech, inner speaking, what I call, and words present. So I make words present to myself in some way that's not speaking. That's what words present means to me. Clearly words, there's no question about that. These are the words weirder or stranger. Absolutely those words, and not weirder or easier or weirder or problematic or whatever. It's weirder or stranger, those exact words. But you got a lot of neurons out there that can participate in this task.
Right. But yeah, good distinction. I think these conversations are both helpful and interesting.
And I'm also seeing weirder on the screen.
Yeah.
And are there aspects about that go beyond just my eyeballs are aimed at this aspect of the screen and I'm seeing it?
No, I don't think I can encapsulate anything else. The shape of it, the size of it. I think it's just awareness of it being there.
Okay. And there as a word, I am
physical word, yeah.
Not only a physical word, but a experiential word. I am seeing the word weirder, not seeing a visual display that I could say is the word weirder, but I am in some way reading or absorbing, receiving the meaningful display of a word weirder from the screen.
Yeah. Again, very very hard to know when it beats what to include in terms of vision, because the vision is obviously there, the beat, and it can be very hard to separate awareness from what you are objectively seeing, but it's not really reaching your awareness in a strong sense. I sort of always struggle with that a bit. Of course, there's always stuff in your visual field, but you're just not noticing it. It's hard to know if that means it's 5% of the awareness of the beat, 10% or 20%. It's definitely present. I'm definitely aware that it's present, but was it in my awareness? It can be quite hard to tell.
So I personally have difficulty understanding what you're saying is a very common thing that most everybody says, actually, but I personally can't see any reason to favor visual phenomena over any other kind of phenomena. Your eyes are open and you're seeing a bunch of shit. I accept that. But your ears are open and you're hearing a bunch of shit, and your ass is open and you're feeling the chair and whatever, and you're leaning forward back, and so your proprioception are doing that, and you were gesturing a little bit ago, and all that stuff is being somehow experientially processed. I personally don't see why there's warrant to say that the visual is more present than all those other things, unless it is. And if it is, then for sure. But
we're definitely vision-dominated creatures, right, in terms of our sensorium. So maybe it's just a property of that. 80% of our experience of the world is visual, right? Yeah, that's what they say. So I guess it might just be that we just have more visual processing going on, and hence it more prominently there. Because I would say it hasn't been the case for me for the other sensations. If I hear something notable in my awareness, and I know, jot it down, but I don't have constant. All those other things that you said, vision is really the only one that's questioning for me when it beeps. How much of what I had in my visual field was I aware of? How much was it impacting me in that moment?
Well, I for sure do not want to imply a disfavor of vision. Um, if it seems like there are other aspects of this visual field that I'm experientializing at any particular moment, then I want to talk about those, even if they're minor. But what I don't think we ought to do is to say, well, just because my eyes are open, then I am processing that, because I don't think
Yeah.
that's necessarily true.
Yeah. Again, another thing that there probably isn't a right or wrong answer on, but something that I'll still trying to figure out. Shall we move on so we have enough time to get through?
Yes, sir. Number 4.
Already 6:50. So I was reading the words 5HT, hypothesis of depression, on the screen, thinking possibly interesting podcast. And then again, I had visual awareness of a face on a screen.
And is the possibly interesting podcast, is that directly present to you, or is that an explanation of 5HT and depression or whatever?
Directly aware to me.
Okay. So there's 3 aspects of my experience simultaneous. 5HT, I forget exactly what those words were.
Hypothesis of depression, yeah.
And the possibly an interesting podcast and the face. And do those seem equally present to you, one more than the other?
I would say probably reading the words is the most prominent. Thinking possibly interesting podcast is the second most prominent, and then the visual awareness of the face the third most.
Okay, well, let's start with the first of those. So I'm reading 5HT, hypothesis of depression. Is that on a screen or?
Yeah.
And what's the experience of that reading? How do you experience that?
So the words are being processed in my consciousness, in my awareness. Again, there's no big projector. It's not very prominent. Like as you said with the reading before, I don't necessarily know if there is as much a temporal sequence to it. So I don't think I read the and then 5 and then H and then T and then hypothesis. Like I kind of was reading it as a whole, and then thinking possibly interesting podcast as I was reading it. But the words aren't in my mind necessarily. I can just see them, understand their context.
So is that to say I am not articulating aloud or to myself these words, but I am gleaning their context. I'm gleaning their semantics as I encounter them.
Yeah, it's exactly right. The concept is being translated almost immediately.
Okay. So I am not speaking these words aloud or to myself, in my experience.
No, not in this case, no.
Okay. Gualtier, are you happy with that portion?
Are we talking about the stuff he was reading, or are we already talking about the words he was thinking?
Reading still.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. And then, so I guess, so I would say, as my understanding so far about this portion of it is that there's really no aspect of my experience other than I am receiving the meaning of these words as I encounter them. It's not like I am picturing the 5HT model so there's no visualization.
No.
And there's no articulation, either spoken or heard of them, and yet I'm getting the meaning of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
And then there's some recognition that this is possibly an interesting podcast.
Yeah.
And how does that go?
I'd say definitely more passive than intentional. Again, no, it's not in my voice. I would say it's thought rather than inner speech. Again, with small asterisks on not having that fine distinction fully, but it definitely felt just more of an automatic thought rather than an intentional speech that I was acting out, if that's sort of the distinction that we're working on.
And are there words involved in this thinking that this would be possibly interesting? Like the word podcast, the word interesting, the word possibly, any of those
Probably
words?
not, actually. I don't actually think the words, more just the idea, possibly interesting. It's more of a conceptual thing. Again, more of a kind of a cognitive judgmental layer rather than the words.
So it would be more or less okay to say that this could be, rather than possibly, this could be an interesting podcast. That would be just as good.
Yeah.
Or this could be fascinating. That would be just as good.
By just as good, do you mean that? No, like, okay, that's an important one. So no, like it wouldn't be, I wrote down possibly interesting podcast because those are the words that I thought. So there is some wordiness to it.
So the question, and this is the tricky question. The question is,
that was a good distinction.
Are there words present, quote, possibly interesting podcast, unquote, or is it the case that I am thinking a thought that if I had to put into words would be, quote, possibly interesting podcast, but I didn't have to put them into words because I was doing the thinking and I knew what it meant.
No, definitely. So possibly interesting podcast is definitely the framing. It's those specific words, not other words.
And are those words present to you at the moment of the beep? Or is the concept possibly interesting podcast present to you even though it's not worded?
I would say both, but those words are definitely present. Those words are definitely, I have awareness of them. I guess what I was trying to say at the start was that it feels more like a thought than an intentional inner speech. But it is those words specifically.
And are those
so much harder than the sensory? Sensory is so easy. I saw yellow. Easy.
So comparing possibly interesting podcast as words that are thought, because I would say that my impression was that there wasn't about words. I was a little surprised to find that there was about words. That's more about me than about you. But what I would like to know is, on the possibility that there were in fact words, is possibly interesting podcast presented in a different or the same way as weirder or stranger?
So this is definitely different. And this is what I was going to say, that there's definitely less of a temporal flow to possibly interesting podcast. It feels like maybe that all came at once, or it was a lot like it. Weirder or stranger was a much more intentional speech with that felt like it had a start and an end. And the possibly interesting podcast kind of feels like it came to me in one moment. In those words, but not possibly interesting podcast in sort of as much of a sequence. They feel like different things, but I don't know if I'm articulating that very well.
Okay. So what I would say is that I think that the reason that DES has to unfold over time is so that we can figure out how to make those distinctions so that next time we're quicker at it or better at it or more efficient at it or whatever.
Yes, for sure.
At the moment, we can say sort of, well, it's not like that, but it's exactly how it's different from that is sort of hard to say.
Yeah. If speech and thought was on either side of an axis or a spectrum, now I don't know if you're going to be happy with this at all. Like the weirder or stranger was more on the speech side of the spectrum than it was the thinking side of the spectrum, which was possibly interesting podcast, which is sort of also on an axis of intentionality versus passiveness. That makes sense.
So what I would say about that is that I thought we worked pretty hard in beep number 3 to say that it wasn't speech, but to keep speech and intentionality sort of on a separate deal. But it's sort of hard to do, and so I think we sort of fall into making it seem like speech, which
I think it's more like speech than beep 4, but that's not to say that felt very like speech.
Right. That's the thing to keep in mind. Just
Okay.
the hard part.
Okay.
Well, dear.
Yeah, I have a clarification. When you initially described the thought, you only mentioned possibly interesting podcast. Um, was there in that thought, was there a implicit reference to the the words that you were also reading at the time? Was that the subject of this possibly interesting podcast, and were you referring to that in your thought as well?
Definitely. Yeah. So completely connected. Yeah.
Okay, that is that why you didn't object when Russ characterized your thought as this is an interesting podcast because this part you didn't mention at the beginning, but it was there sort of. If not explicitly thought, at least it was implicit that the possibly interesting podcast is that subject matter that you were reading about.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
okay.
I
Okay.
understand what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
really
somebody
hard.
could think possibly interesting podcast without a specific topic in mind or with a different topic in mind than what you were
For
reading.
sure. Yeah. No, definitely linked. Definitely linked.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Got it.
There are theories of inner speech that all inner speech is shortened in this way, reduced in this way. The whole entire sentence would be this 5-HT depression thing might be a possibly interesting podcast. That there's no reason for Evan to say the first part of that because he knows what he's talking about. But I don't think that that's true actually about most inner speech. I think most inner speech actually is in full sentences. But Vygotsky doesn't see it that way or didn't see it that way or whatever. So the third aspect of this is that I'm seeing the face on the screen.
Yeah. I don't think there's much else to say there, really.
Okay. Then we have hit our hour. Shall we?
I'm happy to do one more beep because this one was kind of interesting if we want to get through it a bit quicker. But up to you guys if you're running off to do important consciousness work.
It's okay with me. I'm in favor of it.
Okay.
We can try get it done.
Important consciousness work and wait another 10, 15 minutes.
All right, let's.
Nice. Okay.
So we're going to do number 5 or number 6?
We'll do 5.
Okay.
I remember the different elements of it because I have a bit of writing. So I was typing on my keyboard, but that was not in my awareness. Reading this episode was brought to you in partnership. And then I was imagining in my mind's eye a video segment. This was going to take a bit of explaining maybe because there's a few aspects to it. But so I was imagining in my mind's eye a video segment in a pink-red color. The pink-red color is strongly in the awareness. And I was the saying, this episode was brought to you in partnership, felt like it was in my narrator voice. So I sort of have a voice that I do for ads and things like this. And it's, sounds a bit more formal, a bit more proper. So I was reading it in that voice. So there was definitely a bit of an accent to this one. I know that was maybe not it. There's a few elements here.
So I'm gathering that there are 2 aspects of this experience, 2 experiential aspects. The typing doesn't count because that wasn't really being experienced. I was typing, but that was just happening.
Yeah.
So I experience the stream of words. This episode is brought to you in partnership, and I am somehow imagining a video segment. Those are the two strands. And do those seem like equally prominent to me?
They almost seem as one.
Okay.
In a strange way.
Okay. So
this is what I'm doing. Yeah.
All right. I'm happy with that. And do I experience myself as saying this phrase, this episode is brought to you in partnership?
I think so, because this time it has an accent in that I was aware that I wasn't just saying it without a tone. There was a strict, this episode was brought to you in partnership. I had that idea in my head of the exact cadence and the way that I would say it.
And this is innerly experienced. I'm not saying this out of my real mouth.
No, I'm all inner.
Okay. And does it feel like I am, and you say there's one thing that involves the video. So I'm seeing this pinkish red video, and does it seem like I am sort of transporting myself into the situation where I'm watching a video and giving narration about it at the same time? Is that what this experience is, the heart of this? Or does it seem like I am saying that and I am...
So I'm generating a visual in my head of what a small segment of the video will look like while narrating over it. And the things that are in my strongest awareness there is the color of the video and the narration of this episode was brought to you in partnership.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I think so.
Transporting kind of threw me off there. I'm not maybe this.
So it doesn't seem like I don't feel myself to be engaged in the editing task, but I am performing things that take place in the editing environment or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So the words are present with an accent. Are these present as if I am saying those words or as if I am hearing myself?
This time for sure. I have a lot of clarity on that. Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's me.
Okay. So I would say, now this is the bookend of what I said earlier on. This seems to me to be an example of a clearly understood, clearly apprehended inner speaking. This is inner speaking. There is no question about that.
Okay.
10 minutes ago or whenever, you were saying, well, I'm not sure what it means to be inner speaking, what the difference between somehow knowing words and speaking words. I don't know what that was. And I said, well, maybe we'll have some clarification about that. Well, this is the clarification of that. This is what it's like to innerly speak.
So there's always an accent, there's always a cadence, there's always a tone to inner speak.
I wouldn't want to be that specific about it because this example sort of heightens the accent and the cadence and whatever for the reasons that you gave, and it doesn't have to be that specific.
Okay, but I'm just really trying to pinpoint like how I would know did it have these sort of features, but I understand the uniqueness of the different contexts.
Okay, and then. About the other part, about the video. So I am seeing in my imagination, I'm not seeing out on the screen something, I'm seeing something in my imagination. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I am seeing a video about which I am particularly interested in the pink red. Is that right? Or the alternative to that would be I am seeing some pink red shit that I understand to be a video, but it really in my imagination is just a sort of some pink and some red.
The first one, the pink-red color is relevant. It's the brand colors of the company that I'm thinking about doing the partnership with. That's why that's connected and why that's related.
And so
specific tone of color.
So the question that I'm trying to ask is, do I see a video screen or do I see colors that I know to be part of a video screen?
I think I'm kind of projecting. I think what I see is a rectangle on a black background. So like a 16:9 screen. And I'm picturing the pink, and then it's just like the outside of that 16:9 framing is black in my imagination. It's not the full, I don't know, aspect ratio of your imagination. It's in the 16. It's framed. That makes sense.
So I understand that as being something like I am seeing a not very articulated video. I am seeing a video in the sense that I see a screen and I see some colors on the screen, and it's mostly the colors that are present to me.
Yeah, some movement on the screen, but there's something changing on the screen, but the color is the prominent aspect.
Okay. So it's not just that I'm seeing color. I am seeing a video that has colors in it, but the colors are the prominent part.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
So what that does for me, given that we're now past our time, is that makes it clear that Evan knows the difference between innerly seeing colors and externally seeing colors. We had that question about yellow back a little bit ago.
Yes.
And seeing colors as being colors out there, but all I am seeing, all that stuff, we're making distinctions about that. So this was a good example so I'm glad we spent the time to talk about something other than the important roles of consciousness.
I'd imagine that being quite scary if you weren't able to distinguish between external and internal color. That seems like bridging on psychosis or hallucinations or schizophrenia. That seems like quite a scary thing to not be able to differentiate.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about that. Probably better
Yeah.
not to venture down there. So I'm happy with what we have said about this particular sample. I would say that there's probably more to be said, but maybe not worth doing it, that given the time that it's at. And what I think is we should figure out when we're going to do this again. Assuming that everybody wants to do it again.
Absolutely. I kind of feel like I want to do like 3 more of this at least, sort of before I get any sort of ideas, really. It feels like I'm improving a little bit, and maybe I was a little bit stale there because we also had the nerve to go on holidays for 3 weeks. So
yeah,
I was a little bit.
Sorry about that.
No, that sounds good. Next week is perfect.
And I will prepare a video and a transcript and commented upon transcript, which I have been sending. I think I'm up to date about that. And and you all should feel free to add comments or disagreements or whatever to the comments that I think I'm putting out there are things that I think would be interesting to the 150,000 people who might be following along with this when Walter or when Evan gets a chance to put that on the web.
Yeah, I think it could go really. I think this is a really first of a kind in terms of a video, especially with the first podcast. I'm super excited to see how this comes together, but I think it could get very serious viewership.
Right. If people were interested in in the conversation that we had last time, they should be interested in the conversation that we'll have next time. That would be about Evan's own experience.
Right. Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's been really fun. I'm really glad that we decided to do this. I'm learning a lot, and super excited to see how it comes together in the end. I think it's a cool project. It's been a pleasure to do it.
All right, sounds good to me. I guess I should put in my calendar that what do we think is going to be Evan 5, but or Evan 6. But I'll make sure what the numbering is before I send out this calendar invite.
Perfect. I'll let you go solve consciousness. See you next week, guys.
See you.
Hey, guys.